Canada built one of the world's most admired immigration systems. For years, it was sold as a model for the future, a country with labor shortages, an aging population, and a clear need for growth. Immigration was supposed to solve all of it. But then something changed. Canada didn't just open the door. It started bringing people in faster than it could build homes, expand services, or absorb the pressure. And when that happens, even a system designed to create prosperity can start producing backlash instead. This is not just a story about immigration. It's a story about what happens when population growth outruns the country itself. Canada used to think it had figured immigration out. For years, the country sold itself as one of the few places in the West that could make immigration work at scale. While other countries turned the issue into a constant political war, Canada built a reputation for doing the opposite. It presented immigration not as a threat, but as a solution to labor shortages, a solution to an aging population, a solution to slower economic growth, a solution to the long-term math of keeping the country running. And for a while, that story made sense. Canada's population was aging, birth rates were low, employers needed workers, governments needed taxpayers, businesses needed consumers. On paper, immigration looked like the perfect answer to all of it. More people meant more workers meant more growth. More growth meant a stronger future. That was the theory. But theories only work when the real world can absorb them, and that is where Canada's immigration model started to crack. Because the real problem was never just how many permanent immigrants Canada accepted each year. The bigger story was the total number of people entering the country through every channel at once. Permanent residents, yes, but also temporary foreign workers, international students, asylum claimants, other non-permanent residents. The total inflow became much larger than the public debate was really prepared for. And once that happened, immigration stopped being just an economic policy. It became a housing story. It became a healthcare story. It became a transit story. It became a cost of living story. It became a story that ordinary Canadians could suddenly feel in their daily lives. Because every time a country adds people, those people need somewhere to live. They need transportation. They need public services. They need schools, clinics, paperwork, classrooms, and physical space. Population growth is never just a number on a government chart. It shows up in apartment prices, packed buses, crowded neighborhoods, and waiting lists. That is where the Canadian system ran into reality. For years, Canada did not build enough housing to keep up with the population it already had. Then population growth accelerated dramatically. That meant the pressure didn't hit an abundant housing market. It hit a shortage. A shortage that was already fragile. A shortage that was already pushing younger Canadians out of home ownership, already driving rents upward, already hollowing out affordability in the biggest cities. Then more people arrived, and the pressure got worse. That is the point where the national mood started to change. And that mood shift didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened inside a specific political context. For years, Canada's major parties, Liberal, Conservative, and NDP alike, had maintained a rare cross-party consensus on immigration. It was one of the few policy areas where the political center held firm. That consensus made Canada unusual. It gave the system stability and shielded immigration from the kind of weaponized culture war politics that had consumed debates in the United States, the United Kingdom, and much of Europe. But consensus is not the same as accountability. And the cross-party agreement on immigration targets also meant there was very little political pressure to ask hard questions about whether the infrastructure existed to support those targets. Nobody wanted to be the party that broke ranks, so the hard questions didn't get asked, and the gap between intake and capacity kept widening. Because immigration is politically sustainable when people believe the system is controlled. It is sustainable when homes exist, when wages are rising, when public services can cope, and when growth feels manageable. Under those conditions, immigration feels like confidence. It feels like ambition. It feels like the country investing in its own future. But when rents explode, vacancies disappear, and everyday life becomes more expensive and more competitive, the emotional frame changes fast. Growth stops feeling like growth. It starts feeling like overload. And once the public starts feeling overload, the politics harden almost immediately. This is where the debate becomes dangerous. Because when governments fail to plan properly, the most visible people often become the easiest targets. Instead of asking whether policymakers matched immigration levels with housing construction, infrastructure expansion, and service capacity, the conversation gets reduced to something much simpler and much uglier. Too many people are coming. That becomes the slogan. That becomes the viral soundbite. That becomes the emotional release valve. But it also hides the deeper truth. Canada did not arrive at this point because immigration itself is inherently broken. It arrived here because the country treated immigration as if it existed in isolation, as if you could rapidly increase the number of people entering the country without making equally rapid increases in housing supply, transit capacity, healthcare access, and urban planning. You can't. That is the part policymakers seem to underestimate. Immigration creates demand as well as supply. Yes, newcomers add labor. Yes, they help fill jobs. Yes, they support long-term demographics, but they also increase demand for homes, food, transportation, and services. If the country cannot expand those things fast enough, pressure starts building everywhere at once. And in Canada, that pressure became impossible to ignore. You could see it in rental markets where apartment hunting started to feel like a bidding war. You could see it in major cities where students struggled to find housing. You could see it in younger workers giving up on the dream of ownership altogether. You could see it in the broader feeling that the country was adding people faster than it was adding capacity. That perception matters, even beyond the raw data, because politics is not driven only by numbers. It is driven by whether people feel the system is fair, functional, and under control. Once they stop believing that, trust starts to erode. And once trust erodes, even a policy that may still be economically necessary can start losing public legitimacy. That erosion of trust created an opening, and political actors moved into it quickly. Parties that had previously avoided the immigration debate as too toxic began testing new messaging. Conservative politicians found that framing immigration as a government competence failure, rather than a cultural threat, resonated with voters who were not ideologically opposed to immigration, but were furious about housing costs and stagnant wages. That framing was strategically important. It allowed immigration skepticism to enter the mainstream without the explicit nativist language that had previously put it out of bounds. The political window shifted. And once it shifted, it proved very difficult to close. That may be the most important part of this entire story. Canada still needs immigration. That hasn't changed. The country still has demographic weaknesses. It still has labor shortages in key sectors. It still needs population growth to support its economy over the long term. The basic case for immigration did not suddenly disappear. What changed is something else. The public started asking a harder question. Not whether Canada needs immigration, but whether Canada can handle the version of immigration it created. That is a very different question, because a successful immigration system is not measured only by intake targets. It is measured by outcomes. Can newcomers actually find stable housing? Can cities absorb population growth without collapsing affordability? Can schools, hospitals, and transportation systems keep pace? Can the broader public still feel that immigration is being managed rather than imposed? If the answer starts becoming no, then the problem is no longer just policy design on paper. It becomes a legitimacy crisis. And that is where Canada is now flirting with danger. Because when legitimacy collapses, countries tend to swing from one extreme to another, from expansion without enough planning to restriction driven by public anger, from optimism to backlash, from celebrating immigration as national strength to treating it as the source of every social pressure in sight. That kind of swing is not just politically ugly, it is strategically reckless. If Canada overcorrects too hard, it risks damaging the very long-term system it still needs. But if it refuses to admit that the pace of recent growth overwhelmed housing and infrastructure, then public frustration will keep building until a harsher correction becomes inevitable. That is why this issue has become so explosive. It sits at the intersection of identity, economics, class pressure, and everyday survival. It affects rent. It affects wages. It affects commute times. It affects whether young people believe they have a future. It affects whether newcomers can actually build stable lives after arriving. And it affects whether the public still trusts the people managing the country. That is why this is no longer just an immigration story. It is a story about state capacity, a story about whether Canada can align policy with reality, a story about what happens when leaders embrace population growth as an economic strategy, without building the physical foundation required to support it. Because without that foundation, even good intentions can produce instability. And that is exactly what happened. Canada built a national model around the idea that immigration would secure prosperity. But prosperity does not come from population growth alone. It comes from whether that growth is matched by homes, infrastructure, services, and a realistic plan for integration. Without those things, growth becomes strain. Strain becomes resentment, and resentment becomes backlash. That backlash is now reshaping the national conversation. And the deeper irony is this: the people who may suffer most from a poorly managed immigration system are not only the citizens already struggling with affordability. It is also the newcomers who arrive expecting opportunity and instead walk into a country where housing is scarce, competition is brutal, and social tension is rising. That is not a successful immigration model. That is what happens when a country expands faster than it prepares. And here is what makes the politics of this moment particularly unstable. No party has a clean answer. The Liberals, who oversaw the acceleration of immigration targets, are now caught between defending a record they believe in and acknowledging consequences they failed to anticipate. The Conservatives have found political traction in the backlash, but face the same structural reality. Canada's economy still needs immigration, and any serious restrictionist turn carries its own economic risks. There is no easy political exit from a situation created by years of cross-party neglect of infrastructure and housing, which means the debate will stay loud, stay angry, and stay unresolved for a long time to come. So no, Canada's immigration problem is not simply that it let too many people in. The real problem is that Canada scaled up population growth without scaling up the country around it. And unless that changes, the backlash will keep growing. Because no immigration system survives for long when the public no longer believes the country has room to carry it. Canada wanted growth, but growth without capacity has a cost, and the country is now paying it. If you enjoyed this analysis, hit us a like. Subscribe for more in-depth analysis into the Canadian economy. Oh, Canada, thanks for watching.